how do you see that, the work that you do where you're talking about whether it's short-term AI and neuroscience, reshaping industries like event planning and event management, or even in their personal life, what would you offer to our listeners and subscribers for food for thought, a way to frame something, giving a powerful context to take it to the next level? Kind of a word
Seth,
salad
I
there.
feel like you are following me on Instagram and seeing what I talk about, because that was a perfect setup. And I shared some gems yesterday. I was on national TV and I was talking about what is happening when we use artificial intelligence. Is it changing the human brain? And so this, I literally went public with this research yesterday.
It wasn't from yesterday, but I was definitely in Sarah Baldeo's world. And probably by osmosis, it just seeped into my DNA, my amygdala, and all the other, gray matter. So the floor is yours.
Here's my advice to anyone that is using artificial intelligence, agentic AI, generative AI tools. I've been an AI architect for 20 years. I have had the privilege of building financial fraud tracking algorithms, epidemiology, and looking at what happens with disease spread and working with governments. I've had the privilege of working on the tech side, the neuro side, merging the two into neurotechnology. As people move forward and they continue to use artificial intelligence, I challenge them. When you use AI, do not use it to solve everything for you. And the reason I say this is when people do this, there were two huge studies, one from Microsoft, one from Carnegie Mellon University. These studies just came out, and we can see what happens to people when they use generative AI tools to solve all of the answers to their questions. I will freely admit, I have caught my teenager using ChatGPT to do his homework. What we're seeing is people are actually losing the ability to problem solve, and they are using the ability to think critically. I encourage people, explore, experiment, use Claude AI, use DeepSeek, use ChatGPT, use different tools, but don't use it to solve the questions for you and give you the answers. Use it to validate information and hypotheses and ideas that you've already come up with yourself. So if you write a paragraph and you're talking about AI for meeting professionals and how it's going to transform, how do we predict audience sizes? How do we predict what audiences want to hear about? How do we further automate the registration process and curate programming and content for audiences based on what's on LinkedIn? What are the top SEO search terms? There's so much data. Take your ideas and be very specific about what you put into generative AI tools. And when you take your own ideas and then you use it as kind of like a conversational tool, you're not losing your critical thinking, your problem solving abilities. When you just ask ChatGPT, hey, tell me the answer to this equation. Write a paragraph for me. I'm too lazy to do it. You're actually harming your brain in the long term. And so when we look at AI and the brain for the long term, and this is as succinctly as I can put it, it's about being integrative, integrated into your life. Do not outsource your life.
You were reading my mind. That's the word that was coming up. It's like outsourcing. We've had a lot of guests from all walks, the gentleman, Chris Barton, who developed the app Shazam, to many, many others involved in AI, from geopolitical scientists to, professionals like you, and every shape, size, and color in the technology AI world. It's a thing for me. I always try to bring it down to the layman on the street, which is me, the man or woman on the sidewalk. And that outsourcing of the executive function is probably, I think, the biggest crime out there, because I use AI a lot in my writing, and really I use it in an audio manner. I speak and then I assign it a task of clarifying my stream of consciousness. That's probably the biggest use. I have all these ideas. Like I said, I have word salads, unformed thoughts, observations, questions, inquiries. I put it all in there and then I give it direction on how to do it. But at the end of the day, how I'm going to deploy those thoughts, how I'm going to execute it, if I am going to utilize it, or if it's satisfactory for me to even consider, that's my choice. I'm not outsourcing that to AI. Is that what you're saying?
You really always need to have the human component. But what I also encourage people to understand is when you're ideating, this is an example I love using, Seth. Back in my day, in the 1900s, when I was in a library and I had to research
when I had hair.
I still have most of mine. Back in my day, I would go into the library. I had to understand how to navigate the Dewey Decimal System. That used my hippocampus. That used my memory center. I had to read. I had to use what's called Wernicke's area, the language processing center of my brain. I had to read. And I had to read a tangible book. And then I had to take notes with my hand. And when I took notes with my hand, what was I doing? I was activating my motor cortex, because your motor cortex is not activated when you're typing because it's just repetitive. When you're writing, it's unique fine-tuned moments of your hands that activates your motor cortex. Then I had to think, wait a second, can I question this information? Is it true? Is it accurate? I had to critically think. When you do all of those components, and it's great to use AI for research. When I've developed facial recognition tools for use in fraud, I didn't ask AI, can you solve this fraud problem? I'm solving a fraud problem for a bank and I'm going to build a fraud detection tool. Can you solve I didn't ask AI to do that. I came up with an idea. I built wireframes with my team when I was a compliance officer. And then we tested with live people. And then we fed the data into an AI tool to consume it. And so I encourage people, it sounds old school, but sometimes getting back to basics really does challenge your brain, and it lights up your brain in this, diffuse manner. When you over-rely on AI and you outsource everything, you outsource the research, you outsource coming up with ideas, and you're not using your brain. With your brain, it just comes down to you use it or you lose it.